Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, and we're going to talk about Cyberpunk Edgerunners. And the reason we're going to talk about it is in relation to sales of the Cyberpunk 2077 video game, and also people forgetting that Cyberpunk was a tabletop RPG. It's crazy what's going on. So because the anime is so popular, Cyberpunk 2077 is selling a ridiculous amount of copies now. And this is a game that, came out 2 years ago, that there was a huge build up to, a lot of anticipation for this game. Keanu Reeves, of course, involved. And, the game kind of landed with a thud with a lot of people because you needed a pretty beefy system to run it. It wasn't quite show ready. It got pulled out of the Sony store, the PlayStation store, if I recall correctly, because the PS4 version, which why you'd even do a PS4 version? The PS4 version didn't run very well. Now, we actually got it on launch day, and Squid King and I played a little bit of it, and he actually played through it, and it was pretty okay. It was pretty good, it was a huge wait for this game. I don't know, if it was worth the many years, but it was pretty okay, and that was kind of over and done with. And people were like, well, Cyberpunk, people are getting refunds and whatever. Well, now because the anime is out, sales of Cyberpunk 2077 have surpassed 20 million copies. So people are going back and buying the game now that they've actually had time to polish it. Kind of reminds me of No Man's Sky. That was another one that we kind of jumped the gun on. We downloaded it the first night it was available. Little Squid King, very, very excited for that game, and that turned out to be like 10% of what was promised. Now the game is actually very, very good, and it's very in-depth, and pretty much everything that was promised has been added to No Man's Sky. It's actually a really good game, but it took them several years to get there, and that's kind of what's, I think, going to happen with Cyberpunk. But even weirder than this is that people are putting out, let's play D&D with Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Squid King did make me aware of this. It's laughable, and I think that this is what might have prompted this tweet from our Talsorian Games, the publishers of the Cyberpunk tabletop role-playing game, to have game journos reach out to them, because everybody keeps forgetting that Cyberpunk started as a tabletop game. Game journos especially, because I remember a couple of years ago when the game came out, all the game journos said that Cyberpunk 2077 was transphobic and it was racist and it was appealing to the alt-right white Nazis and all this crap. And the original tabletop game, was actually created by a black dude. So it's just, people don't know what the hell they're talking about. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, over 276,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. We do talk about video games and tabletop, as it relates to craziness on Twitter and all of that. And I knew something was amiss when I did see our Talsorian Games put this tweet out. And I was very surprised that it didn't get more traction. They said that many media outlets are writing about Edgerunners and the Cyberpunk game now. If they had liked to talk to the originators of the IP and to the creators of so much of the world lore, we're happy to chat. Just saying, you probably wouldn't write about the D&D movie without mentioning the tabletop RPG. It's because most of the game journos don't realize it was a tabletop RPG because it's not a household name like D&D. But good news, everybody! You can learn to play as the Edgerunners in D&D. And look, it is a role playing game. You know this, right? They probably do. I'm assuming they do. But if you want to adapt the anime characters for D&D, that's fine. Whatever. But it does seem to be there does seem to be a general lack of awareness that Cyberpunk did start out as a tabletop game decades ago, and then it became a video game, and then they had an anime based on the video game. See, this is kind of like, I don't know if you call this like laundering fandoms or what, because we see this happen a lot. You have a lot of people who come into fandoms from another piece of media based on comic book movies, Comic book movies, perfect example. You have a lot of people who fancy themselves as Marvel experts, and they've only ever seen the MCU movies. They've never actually read the comics, or they'll go back and read certain comics, that tie into the movies and then act like they know more than you do. You see this all the time too. But yeah, it's kind of wild that more people aren't reaching out to them and asking the originators of the IP what they think. But we've seen this before too. We saw it with Ernie Gygax in D&D. I mean, Ernie Gygax is happy to talk to anybody, and people seem to forget that he was also involved in helping his dad with Dungeons and Dragons, and he was heavily involved, as I understand it, with the animated series. But anyway, that's how that happens. But yeah, Cyberpunk doing very, very well. The anime doing very well. It debuted number 3 on the most in-demand new shows list, which we talked about. But what's really interesting is that the success of the anime is selling a ton of copies of games. So this is coming from Happy Gamer, not Sad Gamer, not Kotaku. CD Projekt Red has announced a significant milestone for Cyberpunk 2077, stating that the game has just sold over 20 million copies since launch. This news comes on the heels of the popularity of Edgerunners. Again, this is a game that they tried very hard to cancel just 2 years ago. Everybody's going to forget about that. I'm not going to forget about that. They tried to cancel it before it came out. Tried to paint gamers as bigots and transphobes, and the CD Projekt Red were a bunch of racists. And then when the game came out, they were delighted that it was buggy as hell on some platforms, not on every platform, but they were delighted. And it was a huge cluster. It was. Not all went down the memory hole because the anime is good, just like the fact that it was based on a tabletop game. I just hope that Pawnsmith is getting paid every time they sell a copy of this game. I'm sure he is. I like to think he is. Even though there were a few problems along the road, the game is now considered one of the most popular single-player role-playing games ever produced. Took them 2 years to get there, but the production company used Twitter to announce the news and the social media platform to celebrate the significant accomplishment. According to the message, more than 20 million cyberpunks have been seen wandering the streets of Night City, attending parties with Jackie and getting to know Johnny, etc., etc. In April, CDPR announced the game had sold 18 million copies, meaning it only took another 5 months for another 2 million gamers to give Cyberpunk 2077 a try for themselves. It's unknown how many of them have opted to give it a try since Edgerunners was released 2 weeks ago. I think that probably makes up the majority of it, if I had to guess, because a lot of people forgot Cyberpunk was a thing. I mean, it came out, it was a huge deal when it came out, there was a lot of controversy when it came out, and then it just kind of disappeared. Nobody talked about it. Judging from the recent player figures on Steam, the number might be rather significant. For example, when the adaptation of The Witcher was released on Netflix in 2019, it resulted in a substantial increase in the number of physical copies of The Witcher 3 that were sold. Cyberpunk 2077 is expected to catch up to The Witcher's lifetime achievements a while ago, even though some of its figures are massive. As of April this past year, the base game and its subsequent expansion sold more than 40 million copies. Phantom Liberty is the single expansion that will be added to 2077. Remains to be seen how successful it will be when released. A lot more people going to buy it now, I'm sure, since Edgerunners. But yeah, I just think this is funny. I just think this is funny. Oh, they do mention that it was based on the Cyberpunk tabletop RPG. But, if you want to play D&D with Cyberpunk characters, God, don't cross the streams, guys. I hope that our Talsorian Games gets a big boost from this. It seems like they're out on Twitter, advertising their wares. Hopefully people don't forget that this is where the game came from. And I hope that they are financially compensated fairly for it. It'd be good to see them get their due, especially after the kind of the debacle that was the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. They were able to pull out of a tailspin over at CD Projekt Red, it looks like. We're going to wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.